For today's webinar, we're talking about funding opportunities. In feedback from program participants and lead community agencies, everyone is thinking about how to get their connectivity plans funded for their communities. There are a number of different funding schemes out there and potential partners for developing and realizing your broadband infrastructure and digital equity goals. There are federal programs, state programs, local opportunities, as well as private philanthropy and other creative capital stacks. Today, we're going to be focusing on two funding topics. We're going to start off the webinar with Erica Mesker from Connect Humanity, and she's going to share some tips about prospecting private foundation and tips for pursuing philanthropy investment. And then we have Beth Sanner from the Appalachian Regional Commission, and she'll give you an update on the different funding opportunities in pipeline from ARC. We'll have time for Q&A after both speakers. You're encouraged to send us questions as they come in through the chat or through the Q&A feature. All right, so let's dive in and talk private philanthropy. There are a mix of folks in the room: nonprofits, council of governments, county commissioners, ISPs, cities, towns. It's a diverse group. So as we hit off the discussion about private philanthropy, remember that if you see a funding opportunity from a foundation, community foundation, and don't think you might be the correct legal entity to apply from your asset mapping, you will probably have uncovered many potential community partners and nonprofits that would be eligible. So just wanted to provide that framing before we jump in. Now introducing Erica, who I'm lucky to call a colleague. Erica has over 10 years of fundraising, partnership development, and development operations expertise. As a VP at Connect Humanity, she plays a critical role in shaping and managing our partnerships, impact storytelling, and development infrastructure. Previously, she was on the leadership team at the World Wide Web Foundation as development director, and prior to that at TechSoup, the director of global strategic development. Outside of work, you can find Erica hiking and biking nonstop. I know she's from a rural area, so she very much appreciates the work the grantees are doing in this program, and is always keeping everyone in mind when she's looking at funding opportunities. So I'll pass it off to Erica to share some of her expertise and work in fundraising.
Thanks, Sarah. Nice to, well, I can't see you all, but nice to see your introductions in the chat. I'm going to share my screen. Sarah, if you could confirm that you can see this.
Yep, can see it.
And when I share my screen, I can't see the chat. So if there are questions that come over in the chat, can you just interrupt me as I go, please?
Totally.
Okay, great. So like Sarah said, my name is Erica Mesker. I'm VP of Partnerships and Strategic Initiatives here at Connect Humanity. I've been working in the nonprofit sector my entire career, which is now nearly 2 decades. The majority of that has been fundraising, usually like for capacity building for the larger nonprofit sector. So playing a role to build and catalyze funds and programs for a lot of other organizations, usually within a geography or around a specific interest area, for example, broadband. I run the full scope of fundraising initiatives. So I've done individual fundraising, mass outreach campaigns, direct mailings, endowments, phone banks, events, and then today I focus on large and small grants, mostly ideally the larger size, she says, as a fundraiser. And then I also now run the full scope of development operations. I've been doing that for about a decade, and that includes project design with logic models, proposal development, grant writing, budget preparation, the financial planning and analysis that goes with it, as well as the reporting that comes with funding, and then monitoring and evaluation, and then also a lot of compliance work that goes with federal funds. Some fun facts about me, like Sarah mentioned, I grew up in a very, I don't know if I would say very rural, but a rural community where the cows definitely outnumber the people. And we got my first stoplight when I was in high school. Nowadays, I prefer to spend my time hiking outside, walking in the mountains. I've been to 31 of our national parks, and this is me in Glacier National Park. So I'm going to start with like my mindset when it comes to fundraising. And that is like, it's a growth mindset. So there are some folks who, when they're fundraising, like, withhold information, withhold networks, withhold opportunities. and I take a very different approach to that. I think that building partnerships is key to growing the sector and growing the amount of funding and cool initiatives that are out there that in turn grow the entire pie so that there's more funding available for everyone through partnerships rather than all organizations fighting for crumbs. So with that in mind, obviously as a fundraiser, I do a lot of prospect research. We have a program in Appalachia. We do actively fundraise for this program. And I thought to myself, well, if we're doing all of this prospect research, we should share it. And so that's what we're doing today. You can scan the QR code with your phone. This deck is available in the Google Drive, so these links will all be active when this is shared out. So you can click through and see that prospect list. I also have it open so I can give you a sneak peek at it. So you can see our great Lead for America fellow, Shanti, she filled in most of this information. So I pulled a lot of info from the Foundation Center. So that is a freemium tool that you can do research in. So the sources, all of the sources that say Foundation Center, I did a search for the region being Appalachia, the keyword being broadband, and that gave us a short list of some 30 or 40 grant makers who have made grants in the region. If I remove broadband as a search term, then it increases to like 10,000, which was just too much research to do. But if you have like a small little research for us to do in Foundation Center, we're happy to help with that. And then I also went to the Appalachia Funders Network website and pulled the list of the members. So that's basically telling all of us, these are organizations who provide funding in Appalachia. And then Shanti went and did all of this great research to be able to say if there are locations, if they specifically fund broadband or if they fund other tangential areas. And then we also went to Appalachia Community Capital and pulled a list of their memberships so you can see what kind of CDFIs might be in the region. So I invite you to check that out. We are going to keep updating that as we do our own prospect research so we can just share it out with all of you. I invite any of you, if you see an opportunity that might be beneficial for the larger group, send it out through the Appalachia Digital Accelerator listserv, and I will likewise start doing the same. Right, so before we go, I will caveat this presentation with the fact that I am usually giving presentations and training for a nonprofit audience. I realize in the chat, which I can't see, but I see that I have 5 missed chats. I can see that it seems like there's a lot of government or government-like entities. So some foundations won't fund governments, but some will. And so I want to caveat this presentation with, I built it with nonprofits in mind. However, it's still valuable, I think, for everyone. One great example of how that can be so is as a project we have in South Texas. The community there, FAR, they wanted to build a broadband network. And so a local foundation, I believe it was Methodist Healthcare Ministries, they provided the initial funding to do the planning work that led to a pilot. They funded the initial pilot to do a small build that led to a much larger project for which a capital stack was developed of many different funders, including state and federal funding. And then they provided a grant to basically ensure that that capital stack could work to maintain affordability for the community. So just keep in mind that you may think that maybe some of these opportunities are not right for you, but they could be, especially when it comes to more localized support. So I'm going to kick off by just going through how I do prospect research and build my leads pipeline. Sarah, are there any questions thus far?
Not yet.
Okay, great. So I guess obviously the first thing to do is start a prospect list. So a great start is the one that we've just shared with you. You can, download that, change it, delete things that don't seem right for you, do whatever you need, but start with a prospect list. And then as basically a team of one, I have to really streamline how I get information for prospecting. I don't really have that much time to do deep ongoing research. And so I join listservs. And then I have my inbox set up to where all of my listservs and newsletters feed into one area of my inbox. I take 1 day a week at least to go through those, all of those many messages that come through. I highlight them all. I unhighlight the ones that seem relevant to me, and then I clear it out and check the ones that, have some kind of funder update or opportunity update or, news from an organization that I know and love and want to see what they're up to for perhaps a partnership or existing or future partnership. So some of the things I like to follow along with are funder newsletters and CDFI newsletters to receive RFP announcements, or just, by following cdfa.net. It's a newsletter for community finance. I've learned a ton about funds that I did not even know existed. And then I can go down rabbit holes to learn more and more about how those funds are used, how they can be blended and braided together to really drive community impact. So signing up for listservs and newsletters has been helpful to me, including NDIA is another great listserv that you can join. We have our Appalachia listserv. I'm going to try and start sharing all of the opportunities I come across there. And then, of course, state-based listservs. So I live in California. There's a Cal Fiber listserv that includes all of this kind of information, including funding opportunities. I also follow folks on social media, so not just organizations, but also key individuals within the organization, because then I start building a mental map of the kinds of things that leadership within organizations is interested in and the types of partners that they look for. And then that's also something that's, automatically updating that I can just go through and read rather than having to, go and do deep research. Then just like what you saw on that prospect list that we shared, I like to search funders that belong to regional groups. So I link to a website that includes regional philanthropy groups. So Appalachia Funders Network is an example of that. There's Philanthropy West, Philanthropy Southwest. I mean, there's lots of regional funders groups, and most of them list their membership. So that can give you a short list and insight on geography-based funders. Similarly, there is a link here to different community foundations. You can click on a map, or you can do a search by state. What I didn't list here, but what you can Google is you can also just Google CDFI list 2024, and you can get the most recent list of all of the CDFIs that's downloadable as an Excel, and you can filter it by state. So that's also a really great way to build your short list. Then you can see I used Foundation Center. That's one of those freemium tools. Most of these are freemium. Their newsletters are generally free, and then deeper dives often have a cost. So I really do like Foundation Center. I also like Inside Philanthropy, which has a lot of in-depth write-ups on individuals and foundation giving that I find valuable. Then I'll say focus on funder, like focus. I have to remind my team that I can't have a prospect list of 500. That's a good leads list, but the active list needs to be much smaller. So you can build your prospect list, but don't consider that like your ongoing active development pipeline. This is just to do research, qualify or not qualify, and then move on. And then remember that the best funder is the one you already have. The people who are investing in you today can be your same investors tomorrow, and they can provide you with feedback and introductions that are just so invaluable to the growth of an organization. And then lastly, share the research burden with your team. I created a Slack channel so that everyone on my team, if they came across an opportunity, could just Slack it to me, and I could quickly go and have a look to see if it seemed relevant to us or to partners, because I'll forward things on frequently. Okay, so I also wanted to provide a list of more specifically where I do deep dive prospect research. So I'm sure probably a lot of the governments here go to grants.gov. If you don't, it's a great tool. I love researching it. I learn a lot, not only about funding in my space, but what seems to be up and coming across different sectors. So grants.gov, it has most, but not all funding opportunities. For example, I do not think the regional commissions list their opportunities there. I've not seen all of the NTIA opportunities there, but it's a really great place to start your research. Then I've linked to NTIA and then some sublinks within NTIA that have lists of funding opportunities. Then, of course, ARC has their great website that very clearly lays out the opportunities. All of the other regional commissions, which I've listed here, some of which are overlapping with ARC. So check out those regional commissions if you might be along a border area that is between these various commissions, because there might be multiple opportunities for you. And then of course, state websites. So, funding can either be at the state level, federal, state, and even flowing lower. So you can hop onto state websites to do some deep dives. And of course, like I said, sign up for newsletters. So you just get updates. So if you get busy, you don't miss a funding announcement. Same thing. I went over these resources for where to find foundations grants. I came across a new one while building this deck called the $1 Million List. It's a list of all individuals in the US who have publicly given over $1 million. And I say publicly because there are a lot of folks, even foundations and corporations, who give through donor advised funds, which basically puts a door on your ability to research them. I think Grants Alert and Grants Watch are the most open in terms of getting direct access to RFPs. $1 Million List is open. The others are mostly freemium models. And then miscellaneous, right? So Google is your friend. I mean, I've gone and just searched for keywords like broadband and digital equity grants in North Carolina. And then I can see not just funders who may provide that funding, but I see announcements of previous funding, so I can get an idea of who has already funded that work. Also, I use AI. I have a chat GPT that I trained to do prospect research on my behalf. I told it to ask me 20 questions to learn about my organization. I answered those questions, and then I asked it to build a table for me with prospects and how they might align. It can also help you find individuals. It won't give you contact information, but it will point to the folks who it thinks might be best aligned with your work. So that was a fun experiment, and I was surprised at how well it worked. I could just do a whole demo on that someday if you all are interested. I researched previously funded awards. A trove of information is the ARC list of previously funded awards, especially power grantees, because you can do a control find. It has many, many years of data. And if you control F and search broadband or internet, then you can see all of the funded projects, and frequently they're listing who is providing match funding. So that can give you some tip-offs of who might be interested in your region in providing match funds. And I think it's organized by state and by year. It might be by year and by state. But that find was I spent probably a week just documenting everything that I found there. And then something that I've recently come across is hospital conversion foundations in the region and other sectors that rely on broadband to provide services. So a lot of foundations, especially the foundations that are coming out of hospital mergers, have funds to give and have through COVID and resulting from that, have seen how important it is to make sure that their constituencies have access to broadband so that they can access services. So definitely consider hospital foundations in your region. Sarah, are there any questions so far?
Yes, I have two questions.
Okay.
Can I share the funding research doc with people outside my program? And sort of relatedly, someone's also asking about your presentation, this presentation you have, if it will be shared anywhere.
This presentation, I've already put it on the Appalachia shared drive. I'm not sure who has access to that, but both this and the funders research are both on that drive. So I think it depends on the team's permission structure. So
Okay, sounds good. And the other one is summary. If a funder does not offer grants for broadband or digital equity, would you still approach them?
yeah, it's a tricky one. The answer is yes, I would, but with the caveat that it will take time. Like it will take time to build the relationship. It will take time and effort to teach them why it's important and to bring them in as someone who's bought in to being able to see the points of intersection for why broadband helps the strategic areas that they're focusing on. So yes, but knowing that it will take time and work, but it will be worthwhile because you'll be building a champion for your organization internally at that organization. So over time, it will probably go better.
Great. That's what we have for now.
Okay. Right. So, okay. So we've gone through all of this. We have a prospect list. It is freaking massive. You're so excited. Look at all this opportunity. Okay. But now you have to qualify the prospects. And this is the step that so many people forget. I am guilty of this. Definitely people on my team are like, look at this opportunity I found, but like no one has gone to make sure that it actually aligns or that they have active funding opportunities or that it's in the geography that we need. So this step is overlooked, frequently forgotten, super important. Basically the goal is like now you're taking this huge list of people that you're excited about and you're qualifying them. Are they in the right geography? Do their goals align or could they align to the previous question? Are they still funding? Are they active or have they shut down? You know, all of these little questions that you have to get in and ask. I start generally with funder websites. I check and see if there are open RFPs. I look to see what are their strategic focus areas and if they align with any of my programs. I think broadband is important for so many different areas, so it's very easy for me to find strategic alignment. But ideally there will be like clear strategic alignment. And then, yeah, what amounts do they typically fund? You know, if there's a funder who you can see by looking at their previously funded awards list funds 20,000 and you don't know that and you go to them asking for 200,000, there's going to be an obvious mismatch and they're going to know that you've not put in the time to research their levels of giving and interest areas. So it's important to do that. If they don't have a ton of information on their website, you can look at tax filings. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I love looking at 990s. I probably look at 990 a week, maybe every other week. So you can look at 990s tax filings and audits, like all financial audits. Many organizations have a best practice of posting their audits and their 990s. If not, it's publicly available information, so you can go and Google it. In those documents, usually what you can find, in addition to highest paid executives, you can see who has been funded. So funders will list the grants that they've given, but also nonprofits. So if you find an organization similar to yours and you think, wow, I wonder who funds them, go and look at their 990s. They'll list who funds them. There are ways around this. You know, people can hide behind donor advised funds and all of these other things, but generally speaking, the sector has good best practices and you should be able to pretty easily see who's funding who. And fun thing to know, Foundation Center bases a lot of their research off of pulling this data from 990s, but just makes it very quick and easy to find the information. So you can find things by searching through 990s. And then, of course, find a contact. A warm introduction is a wonderful thing. That's, like I said, if you have a funder, a current funder, they're your best funder. So, you know, see if they'll open doors on your behalf for a project that they believe in. See if your board will make introductions or open doors on your behalf. Go to LinkedIn, search for organizations, individuals within those organizations, and see if you have first, second, or third degree connections. And then ask. I mean, if you have good relationships, people, I find, generally will open doors for you. That's not to say that you have to put the burden of work onto them, like write an introduction paragraph for them to send rather than making them write something about you for you, you know, take the work burden off of the people you're asking to do work for you. But I find people are generally open to opening doors when there's a clear ask involved. Reach out to people on LinkedIn. I don't do that this much because my LinkedIn network is not so strong, but I have colleagues who do, and it works really well. So don't be afraid to, you know, shoot people a LinkedIn message, and don't be afraid to follow up. And then, of course, you can like Google it. If contact information is not on people's websites, then you can Google, you know, name, email. I like to put, you know, if it were Ford Foundation, I know that their end is like at fordfoundation.org. So I can put at fordfoundation.org, see what shows up. Fun hint, what I've found very effective is looking for file types. File type .pdf, file type Excel, XLS, right? There are a lot of events that happen. A lot of that stuff is put on the internet, not behind any kind of paywall. And then if you just put in a file type, I have had very good success at finding PDFs that list participants' email addresses. So, you know, obviously with great power comes great responsibility. Do not spam people, but, you know, have outreach to people. It does work. Sometimes you won't get an answer, but sometimes you do. And sometimes it can turn into really interesting partnerships, and if nothing else, a really great opportunity to pitch a project and get some feedback on it. Okay, so that's qualifying, right? Where am I? Okay, any questions?
We've got some questions, but maybe we can open up the floor at the end just for timing.
Oh, shoot, sorry. Let me run through this, like the strong proposals. Number one, read and follow all of the instructions. Like, this is the biggest thing I can say, especially with government grants. Like, the number of times I see people using Arial instead of Times and using 11.5 instead of 12. Like, don't do that. This is not the time to get cute. Follow instructions. If a funder asks for mission, vision, goals, subhead everything mission, vision, goals. And then also, I put some resources here, links to logic models, examples. I really like Department of State's templates and trainings. And then please go to Dogwood's Health Trust website and take some of these free trainings. It's mostly focused on writing government proposals, and it is excellent. And also, hint, you can watch it on 2x speed to like make it go quicker. So I'll finish there.
Thanks so much, Erica. Oh,
sorry, go ahead, Claire.
Thanks so much, Erica, and appreciate the overview. If you did join later, I'll drop the link again to the funding research that Erica was talking about, the prospecting. And Erica will also be available at the end of the presentation for any further questions. Going to move ahead now to Beth Sanner from ARC. We're so lucky to have you as a close partner to the program, and also to share some funding opportunities that folks on the accelerator might want to apply to. A little background on Beth. She's a real rural broadband advocate. She's a multidisciplinary data geospatial analyst with a diverse education and background. She holds a master's degree in GIS geography from the University of Kansas and has an extensive background on broadband. Her role at ARC centers around advising, guiding, and providing strategic problem solving to improve broadband connectivity to the 13 states that comprise the Appalachian region. So with that, I'll pass it off to you, Beth, and also feel free to comment on anything that Erica said as well. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much for the intro. And I am going to comment on some of the stuff Erica said because I also have a love of collaboration and that growth mindset. I feel like is really a key point of it speaks for me as an individual as well as what I advocate for within ARC as well. One of the things I wanted to mention when somebody had asked a question about if you would still approach a potential funder, even if broadband or digital equity or digital inclusion were not explicitly something that they had stated in as an interest. I would because what I am continually trying to push throughout our agency as a focal point here is that broadband is not just an isolated utility. It is it's a centerpiece now for economic development. So while a entity or an individual may not explicitly have interest in a broadband project or helping to fund a broadband project, they might be interested in economic development for communities or community revitalization. And broadband is a critical component of that. So I think that make sure that you keep that in mind, that broadband is not an isolated thing that's happening outside of or in a vacuum. It is a fundamental piece for community building, and not just community building, but I have a little chart here next to me. You can't see it, but I have like the pillars of broadband, and it's economic development, education, healthcare, civic engagement, and overall quality of life. So an individual may not necessarily say, I support, or I want to support a broadband project, but they could support those other things, which broadband is a critical component of that. So I will pivot now, but I just wanted to state that really quickly. And I will start I'm going to do a quick and dirty PowerPoint here, and it'll be shared as well because along with what, I'm sorry, I'm not good at talking and doing at the same time. So if I get fumbled up here, just bear with me. I am also a huge proponent of collaboration and that growth mindset. Along with that, one of the things that I keep pushing here, and I have it actually written on one of my sticky notes here, is that interagency cooperation, which to me doesn't just mean inter-federal agency. Agency, I take it to all levels. So not just a federal, but coalitions, COGS, munis, grassroots, organizations, nonprofits, et cetera. All of these entities are crucial in solving this problem. And it's not a problem that's going to be solved in any manner without the same amount of veracity that we've seen any of these large problems that our country has tackled, throughout our generations. It takes all entities and all manners of individuals speaking up, overcoming the barriers and addressing them at all levels. So that being said, a little bit about ARC. Can you all see my screen? First of all, I should have asked that.
Yep, we can see it.
Perfect. ARC is a regional commission that was developed in 1965. So we just celebrated our, 41st birthday or 51st. I can't do math either. One of those two birthdays. And so we've been around for a little while, and we are explicitly serving the Appalachian territory. So a 206 square mile region that encompasses 26 million individuals. All of these 13 different states. And I have a quick little PowerPoint or a quick little link here that goes to, some of the maps that we have here, not as detailed as some of the other resources that you would use on some of the other websites that get down in the nitty gritty here, but we do have some really good information here. So there's that. A little history on broadband funding for ARC. It is one of our strategic investments, and it is a priority for our critical infrastructure component of ARC's mission. So broadband is and will be funded for now and the foreseeable future as part of what we do, because again, ARC's mission is an economic development agency, and as such, broadband is a crucial component to that. So historically, I'm just going back to 2017 since Power's inception, because that was when we really started funneling a lot more into these projects outside of area development funds. But you can see there's a nice little split here between non-construction and construction projects. So we consider non-construction to be anything that's not digging in the ground, basically, and construction to be basically that. So last mile, middle mile, fiber deployment, those are what we really consider to be like the actual infrastructure. And then everything else falls into like this kind of bucket. And then we have a few that are specifically state basic agency administered projects. And I'll talk about basic agencies in a minute because it's so much fun. Uh, so some of ARC's broadband funding opportunities would come from a, a couple different pools of money that we have allocated. And you can go on our website anytime and see how we allocate our funding over every fiscal year that's Congress appropriates. And so far, nothing has changed this year. And in 2025, so far, everything is the same as well as from fiscal year 2023. So what I have here is basically what it is. And also the area development funds is all broken out on our website. Since we're a federal agency, we are obligated to keep that information public. So anybody can see where we fund that over the course of time. So power is one of our funding opportunities here. It's a new program, well, not new-ish. It started, I believe, in 2017. And we have about 65 million allocated from last year. We have 65 million allocated for this year and next year. So so far so good. We have a 50 million or 55, sorry, 50,000 max on planning, and we have a 2.5 million cap on implementation. Implementation does not necessarily mean construction, but we'll talk about that. But it is explicitly for coal impacted communities. So that is the caveat for this one. The LOI for this program was due on March 1st. So anybody who's interested in applying for this will have to wait until the next funding year. But it does give you an opportunity to start doing planning if you're interested in this. Arise is the other one. Also, I do have links to all of these. These are active links that go to our website, so it's pretty easy to negotiate once you get a hold of this PowerPoint. You can go to all of those. But Arise is a 1 billion that was allocated as part of the IIJA that will be paid out as $2 million increments over 5 years. We just started it with 2023, so 2024 is now upon us, and we have 200 million set aside for that. I don't even think that we spent all of our 200 million from last year, so we have a little bit of rollover there. And these ones are multi-state projects only, so multi-regional. We do love seeing that collaboration amongst different areas. So this is an opportunity for entities that have some similar needs and desires to get together and really collaborate here for some great projects. We have a $500,000 max for planning and then a $10 million for implementation. So these ones are really great for those entities, like I said, that have similar needs that they're seeing and want to make the most out of that. It doesn't have to be adjacent territories. It just has to be, a plan, as any of our current Arise grants would know, or grantees. We also have our area development funds, which are they originate at the state level, so they all go through your state program manager, and I have a link to that. So any of those projects have to be prioritized with your state program manager, and there's pools of funding explicitly developed for each state. Some of them do enjoy using that funding for some of the grants at the broadband and digital equity side of things, but we're seeing less of that now that BEAD has been upon us. So we'll kind of see what happens next year as that moves forward. A caveat being also any construction projects, they do have to be administered with a state basic agency or a federal basic agency. ARC does not administer or manage any construction projects. We are just not capable of it. We don't have the expertise in it. So any projects that are going to be put forth for a construction must have a state basic agency or a federal basic agency committed to administer the project. Examples of those are listed in here. I can show you really quickly. But some of them that we've frequently worked with are EDA, HUD, the Federal Transportation, Commerce, USDA, Rural Development, and then each state basic agency is listed in here that's able to partner with us for these. But we will not fund a project without a state basic agency or a federal basic agency being listed and willing to manage those projects for construction. So Power and Arise resources, I just wanted to link these here for anybody who is wanting to explore this more. Here's some important dates for the Arise, since these are accepted on a rolling basis. We have a pretty comprehensive review process for our Arise grants. You submit a concept paper. The concept paper then gets submitted to a subject matter expert within ARC. After that, then we review it and we will work with states to determine if it's something that we would like to move forward with, allowing for an entity to apply for funding. So it's not a guarantee of funding. It's just if the concept paper is accepted, we will invite them to apply, and then they will submit a full application. At that level, we will then continue working with the states to hash out any questions there might be, anything that might be sticky about it, or we might have some more details that we need hammered out. But in that case, they are pushed through and we are able to move them forward to see if they will get approved by our federal co-chair. And so it's a pretty lengthy process, but we do it throughout the year to kind of make it a little bit more bite-sized. So our next funding round deadline here, our next deadline to submit a concept paper is April 30th. And then June 30th will be the final one for this fiscal year. And then it'll start all over again starting in October for the next fiscal year. Does anybody have any questions so far, or do you want me to wait, Sarah, until the end?
We do have some questions. I think
Okay.
generally we can wait to the end, but I do want to know on this page, is there any examples of concept notes if they click on these links?
No, there's not any examples on the concept papers, but you can find the concept paper template on our website. So if you go to the Arise link here, and if you want an example of one, I have no problem sharing those types of things as long as like everybody is okay with it. I'm all for sharing opportunities and information in that manner. So you can look and see for grantee resources or applicant resources. We also have the funding opportunities here. If you go to Arise, you can go to that. We also have webinars available for it.
Awesome.
Yep, and then you do your project summary here. So this is where you have that template that is filled out. So if you go there, you would see it, and it's pretty cut and dry. It's really only 2 pages, and then there's the separate ones there.
Great. We're still on your slides, just FYI, but Erica did drop
I'm so
a
sorry.
link. No worries. She did drop a link to the concept paper template, so we're good.
Okay, sorry about that. I should have just shared my screen instead. I was just sharing the PowerPoint. Okay, so now you can at least see that.
Yep.
Great. So yeah, all you have to do is just go to our funding, and then again, so it's within Arise. So investment priorities, and we have our or not there, grants and opportunities. You go to funding opportunities, and if you click on Arise, it'll take you there, and then you can just scroll through and it'll allow for you to see these. So there's that. Okay, so back onto our Power and Arise resources here. So you guys can see my PowerPoint again?
Yep. Mhm.
Great. Okay, great. So again, here's some just basic resources. So these again are taken on a rolling basis. So if you don't feel like you're very you're there quite yet for a submittal right now, or you don't even think you can get it by June, there will be more funding coming for next year and for 2025. So the fiscal year. So right now we're on fiscal year. We're finishing up the fiscal year 2024. And then we're going to be rolling into fiscal year 2025. So at least that's how my understanding of it is that this is the end of this fiscal year. July is the beginning of the next fiscal year. Or maybe this is the end of fiscal year 2023. It's hard to know, but it's all on our website. So the big thing that I wanted to talk about on this one, because we've had a lot of questions happening on this, the broadband as a service, this is a new project type that we have put through that can be funded through any of our funding pools. So Arise, Power, and area development funds. Any of these can be utilized to fund these different types of projects. So broadband as a service is a new type of project that we came up with to kind of get around the ickiness that some of our entities were having surrounding the ownership of the actual infrastructure. Since we won't fund a private entity, we will fund a community to put out an RFP to procure broadband as a service. And what that means is that we have to kind of take broadband and stop looking at it as just the construction is the end all be all. And remember that they're there to provide a service. Construction is a critical component of it, but the service is really what we're keying in on here. And the way this works is that a grantee would come up with a defined project area of unserved or underserved locations. They'd work with their broadband office and making sure that those areas were, applicable per the state data. And they would then work with their state program manager to ensure that they're on board, because remember, we are a quasi federal agency. We are also a state agency, and that we work with our states very closely. We don't fund anything where our states are not on board. So having state buy-in is critical here. So the way these work is that the entity that we would be funding would be the grantee, so munis, nonprofit, any of those entities, and then they would then competitively procure broadband from an ISP service. It's over a 7-year period that they are obligated to provide service, but the way the payout works is that it's not based on reimbursement for construction costs. It is based on the number of locations being served. So if it is that the ISP would be able to provide 80% of the locations with service in that first 2 years, you could have, a heavy payout in the very first 2 years as those services became available to those individuals. So it's not based on construction, it's based on service being provided. And so on and so forth. You can get pretty creative in how you set it up. We're not necessarily putting our paws in the RFP portion of it. We have some experts that we have been working with in Ohio and other areas where they've been doing this, and it's been, so far, we're moving forward, so we know it's viable. But I do have the links here for these construction, non-construction, and broadband as a service project guidelines. I'm just trying to be cognizant of the time. Okay. And then, so any of these have the links there. So feel free to look at them and reach out to me if you have any questions. Again, here's some more basic information, basic resources that are really helpful for anybody that's wanting to dive in more for some of the resources. And then I also put some best tips and practices here. So planning out the details and project, working through to make sure that they're viable, eligible, sustainable, and fiscally responsible. Making sure you get your matches in place prior to applying. That's not necessarily to say that you can't change. We have our current grantee with, some of our Connect Humanity projects right now where they're still continuing to solicit for underwriting on those matches, but the match in and of itself is already in place, and it's just going to be a different pool of match that it's coming from. So making sure you reach out to your state project or program managers to discuss the project. This is critical. Reaching out to the state broadband office to ensure that the project aligns with their strategic goals. We don't want to duplicate efforts here. I will say right now that we did just fund a project where there was RDOF because the entity was able to make a sound judgment call that the RDOF recipient was not making sufficient progress and that they weren't going to build out to all the areas, or that they defaulted. So we have a lot more flexibility in funding here than what some of the other agencies do. Conducting feasibility studies prior to applying for construction projects, that's critical for me. I want to know that you have an idea of what it is that you are applying for. We have too many projects that end up getting just sitting basically in limbo because they move around too much and they didn't understand necessarily the competitive landscape or what was happening at the get-go, and it's a waste of everybody's time, and we don't want that. So apply for a planning grant first. We fund those all the time, and making sure you get the resources in place for that. Reaching out to all of these different entities to get the support and continue to include them in the project development, because again, all levels, not just, the state, but all levels, getting down to the nitty gritty there and to those communities and getting buy-in from them is so important here. And then again, making sure you have capable staff and support to manage the grant through its life cycle. So I put some other resources on here, and feel free to utilize them. NTIA has some great technical assistance documents in there that get down to the broadband 101s, and they explain last mile, first mile, and all that stuff. And I know that you're working with Connect Humanity on some of those other things, but these are just some broad ones. And then questions and my contact information. I think I
Thanks.
got it through.
You got through it. Thanks so much, Beth. We do have some questions, so I think maybe if you don't mind coming on camera, and also Erica, maybe I can try to like tag team these a bit. We have one in the chat. They're going to be consideration on modifying the requirements for no data cap in perpetuity on the project by the ISP for these awards, which is an impediment to getting an ISP to agree.
Yes, so actually this just came up yesterday, and I was speaking to one of our other program coordinators here about this, and I am not a fan of removing the no data caps because of the fact that I feel that it's not in the benefit of the community, that it's in the benefit of the ISP. We're not here to line the pockets of the ISPs, and unless it's an ISP, we have some pretty critical components in place that if we are going to modify a grant agreement to do something that is not in the benefit of the community in our eyes, there's got to be a qualitative and quantitative methodology in place to show how it is going to benefit the community in the long run. So they need to provide justification or some compelling argument to show. Sorry, I'm reading off of what I had for one of our other ones, because we also had an ISP that wanted to reduce the performance period from less than 7 years. And we said they would have to do a quantitative informational analysis here to produce a justifiable argument in which this will benefit the community. So if an ISP does not want to wants to remove the data cap aspect of it, then they would have to show us why that would be in the benefit of the community. They'd have to provide some compelling evidence.
Thanks, Beth. I'm going to put another question here in the chat for everyone to look for. Beth, it's for, is it BAS? B-A-S? BAS
Yeah,
for BAS.
broadband as a service. I know it took me a while.
ISPs don't see funding until after customers are getting service.
Correct. The way that it's typically, I mean, so for any of these broadband construction projects, typically they're not getting the way that at least it was in my experience when I worked for a consultant and an ISP, is that when you're reimbursing for these costs, typically they're getting reimbursed as the project's ongoing, but it's minimal. It's also small portions of it, right? These can be larger chunks that can be paid out at the very front. So if they have, 20% or 40% of their services being lit at the beginning, or, within year 1 or year 2, then you can like I said, end that payout to where they can receive, 60% of the grant upfront, or, in that first year. So we're allowing for the communities to really tailor the RFPs and the grant agreements for them, between them and the ISPs, to be to allow for that benefit. But there's some components that we really don't want to move on. But that one, the payout can be definitely more heavy in the front. But no, we don't want to see funding until after services are being provided, because that's the service component of it. So they can start getting reimbursed for some of those costs on their end, as they get services provided. But yeah, it wouldn't be until after.
I'm going to merge 2 questions and then ask them to you both. So it's around relationship building. So is there anyone I can talk to at ARC before I apply for a grant? And then I'm going to assume that's to discuss an application. And then somewhat relatedly, do I invite funders to my community events, especially if I don't have a relationship with them? So Beth, I'll let you take that first, and then we can go to Erica.
Yeah, I am always happy to discuss, whereas my predecessor may not have had the capacity, or maybe just wasn't in that, I'm not sure. But some of the information I've been hearing is that they haven't necessarily gotten this level of communication or collaboration prior to submitting for an application before. I am all on for helping people craft the best application possible, and telling them, what may be an impediment, or what to, focus more on, or what may be, better to leave out of it and better to, pivot to. So I have no problem helping. So the max payout for BAS is going to be dependent on the program. So for Arise and for Power, they're two different ones. We call these implementation projects, although they're not construction projects. So for Power, it's 2.5 million, and for Arise, it's 10 million.
All right. And Erica, for inviting funders or any guidelines for building relationships with funders and community events and like.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I would say invite, community, especially if they're part of the larger community stakeholder constellation. But I mean, ideally, you're like, have emailed them some context about what is going on and why you would love to have them there, so that it's not just like a blind, hey, here's an invite. Otherwise, it will land in their inbox. Someone will be like, oh, what is this? I have no idea. And then probably, delete it, pass it over. So I would say giving context and ideally a quick phone call would be beneficial to actually getting someone to attend.
And I think this is going to be our last question, but I would also encourage folks to continue to let us know your questions, and then maybe we can get Erica and Beth to a future open house. So this one is around like collaboration, and I'm not sure if it's for an ARC grant or generally. So I think both of you can answer this as well. Is there any utility in collaborating on an application? So I can start with Erica and then we'll go to Beth.
I mean, yeah, my answer is hell yes. I think the best application, like the best projects that I've worked on in my career are like multi-partner, like regional efforts, like either regional or within a specific issue area, but that have many partners who are all leveraging their strengths, relationships, and what they can deliver to make the entire project uplifted. Each organization has a specific skill set, but by our powers combined, we will be even better. That's also why I really like working at capacity building organizations and like umbrella backbone type organizations, is like being able to bring together those networks of people and organizations to do great things collaboratively and in partnership. So yeah, I think there's a 100% value in, going for big opportunities as a group.
Great closing notes. Thank you, Erica. And same question for you, Beth, in closing notes.
Absolutely. I am going to echo what Erica said. Those are the best projects that I see, and the ones that I get the most excited about are the ones where I know there's buy-in from all kinds of entities, and it makes everybody more excited too. And it allows for that collaboration, not just to stick within these entities that are a part of this, but it spreads, right? When other people see that these projects are happening, it fosters creativity and their imaginations to start doing more with their projects too, and reaching out to non-traditional, partners in ways that maybe they never thought of, and to stop, putting those sidebars in place where they don't have to be. So I agree 110%.
Wonderful. Well, that was a lot of useful information. Thank you, Erica, for sharing your prospecting, fundraising expertise with us, and Beth for a great overview of upcoming ARC opportunities that folks can take advantage of. We'll make sure to get everything in the public resources folder on our drive. We'll also try to address the other questions and comments that have been coming in. We can see them in the chat. Yeah, moreover, we really appreciate both Beth and Erica, your dedication to democratizing knowledge, especially on a topic like funding. The funding list that Erica referred to is in the public drives folder. There's also the ILSR funding document, which tracks the different state funding programs and when they open or anticipate an opening and closing. So I just wanted to make a note of that. And if you have any further questions, a great way to get them answered is to come to an open house. They happen every other Tuesday. With the digital equity cohort starting soon and many folks receiving specialized technical assistance, we are going to take a pause on webinars. We'll update the group with one-off webinar opportunities as they come up. So thanks to our speakers and thanks to everyone for joining. And again, if you have any questions, please reach out or we'll see you at the next open house. Thanks again.